Hi everyone, it's Paul. Let's look at mesothelioma. So this can be quite a tricky diagnosis. What we're going to look at is the most common pattern, which is pretty much a well differentiated pattern of mesothelioma. Specimens are usually highly cellular, so looking down here I can see lots of groups, and notice they're slightly complicated. So this one's branching a little bit like a sort of X, and then lots and lots of balls of cells. So highly cellular, large groups of more than 50 cells. So and notice how they kind of bent around as well. In the pleura, then we know we're dealing with malignancy. It's simply a matter of what sort. This is a feature that you sometimes see as well, and they are collagen cores within the cells, staining that sort of greeny brown. Here's a typical group, and you can see the scalloped outline to the group, formed by the centrally placed nuclei of the mesothelial cells. Notice too that the nuclei are really quite uniform. They have prominent nucleoli, but they're all fairly round and oval. Another case showing what you sometimes see, which are these little arangiophilic cells. We'll look at them more in a minute. And in this case, you can see there's a large amount of that collagenous material. Often, if the pap stain's working well, it'll be really bright aqua blue. On the DiffQuick slides, it's this sort of magenta colour. You can see it streaking in amongst the cells here. And so unlike adenocarcinoma cells, these groups are solid because they're filled with this collagenous material. Notice here, the cells are retaining that mesothelial characteristic, and see the really bubbly glycogen that's present in these cells in that kind of perinuclear fashion. There's another case. Again, we've got balls of cells here. Notice they don't stain particularly well with a DiffQuick because they're too dense. But you can see the shape in them, and the fact even at this power that they have really quite a large number of nuclei present. Here's a really large complex group. See how it's forming long branching arrangements, almost looks like a person standing side on, and the actual cells themselves in there are really quite uniform, and you can again see that collagen in there, that magenta material that's arranged around like a core in the middle of the cell groups. And there's quite a lot of that in this specimen. So this is not always present, but it's quite a useful feature. It is seen very rarely in adenocarcinomas as well, but rarely to this degree, I think. So these are large groups. They must be malignant, and we really need to just check out the cellular detail to make sure they have mesothelial characteristics. Notice here we've got this nice scalloped outline to the cells. Nuclei are fairly uniform, and it's quite a large group, so there's quite a lot of nuclei in there. Same appearance here with that scalloped outline. That's formed by centrally placed nuclei that are set in from the edge of the group mostly. They have quite prominent nucleoli. And what I want to do is really check out that they have very mesothelial characteristics in terms of cytoplasm. Notice that scalloped edge again here. Nuclei are really not showing much variation in size and shape in this specimen, and that is a real feature. Often mesothelioma, it's just a plasma cell down there. Notice also that you should be able to match the cells in the groups back to the single cells that are lying around that are obviously mesothelial. That one has windows in that group. And another case here, again, showing that same appearance of balled up cells, as well as quite a cellular background, and quite large groups, some of them starting to become kind of elongate, finger-like. That is the collagen core, staining that aqua blue, nuclei arranged around it. And in here, I think you can see windows in that group, and the uniformity of nuclei. Notice that perfect little cell in cell there, that's a mesothelial arrangement, and it is the same cells we're looking at in the groups. Just moving around, you can see some really quite long and finger-like and branching groups of cells, and that is a real feature. This is the cell block that I'd show you. You can see those similar groups on it. And if we look at the groups of cells, if this was adenocarcinoma, these would often have hollow spaces in them, but notice, because of the collagen, that is a solid ball. And if we stain that with, say, a Van Giesen, then it would stain positively. This is what you see occasionally. Notice this big vacuolated cell. That is hyaluronic acid that's overproduced by the tumour. And we have little orangiophilic cells arranged around here too. This is an interesting case, so it's really showing overexpression of normal mesothelial products and characteristics. Notice the big blebbing cytoplasm on these. This is a lot more single cell arranged than the other cases we were looking at. It does still have a few big groups like this. And when we look on high power, notice that yellow material around there, that is the glycogen that was showing up as bubbly cytoplasm on the air-dried slides. That area there is like a glycogen pool. And in addition to that, notice the lacy borders on all of these cells, and they're forming those windows, those cell apposition groups, and really well-defined sort of two-tone cytoplasm. Here's a larger group, again showing that scalloped outline, windows between the cells, and real uniformity of nuclei. So not a whole lot of malignant nuclear criteria here. This is more an architectural diagnosis. Again, it's got glycogen, prominent nucleoli, and this just shows you what that glycogen looks like on the air-dried slide. It's that bubbly perinuclear cytoplasm. So in summary, mesothelioma usually presents in balls and finger-like groups. They're often much more complex groups than are seen in reactive cases, so they have branching, more depth of focus, and much, much larger. Often you'll see collagen cores in them, which stain magenta on the diff-quick and a sort of aqua blue on the pap stain. Remember, these are well-differentiated tumours mostly, so the nuclei tend to be quite uniform and not show a lot of anisokaryosis. In fact, if you see a lot of variation, size and shape, you need to really start thinking harder and look for more adenocarcinoma features. Although the nuclei are fairly uniform, often they'll have very prominent nucleoli, just like adenocarcinomas, and they can mimic that closely. You will occasionally see large, bizarre malignant cells amongst a very uniform population. Remember that these are mesothelial cells, and they have all the characteristics that we've talked about with mesothelial cells. Lacy cell borders, windows in between the cells. And what we were looking for really is just one cell population. So the cells in the groups should match back to identifiable mesothelial cells in the background. Some other features you sometimes see that are sort of soft features are orangiophilic cells that look a bit like squamoid cells. They're not always present. Sometimes you'll see an overproduction of hyaluronic acid, and that results in bubbly cytoplasm. But this should be fairly rare, and there should not be a lot of those sort of cells, particularly in cell groupings. Glycogen is often overproduced in these, and you'll see that as bubbly cytoplasmic vacuolation on the diff-quicks, and sometimes there's pools of yellow staining material on the pap stain. As I said, this is a difficult diagnosis, and immunohistochemistry is essential in helping to prove that it's not adenocarcinoma and that it is mesothelioma. We would always suggest biopsy to confirm that.